Hello guys, BJ back, and we have had a hotfix in Warpforge. Guys, this is quite rare when this happens. We had a message dropped from EG that they were looking to make amends for the slightly overpowered and broken Astra Militarum card expansion that came out last month. They kind of acknowledged it. I'm guessing that the stats are showing that some of these cards are just busted, and so they've decided to hotfix. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm going to talk about what the changes actually are. I'll give you some impressions and some thoughts as a result, and I'm even going to pinpoint a few cards that I think could also do with touching in the monthly balance patch. But before I do that, the first thing I want to say is they did mention that their aim is to start the competitive season with the balance patch launched. That is something that I take my hat off to EG. I am massively excited about that, because we've been asking for that for ages, that if they're going to make changes to the game, make the balance patch, they should try to launch that at the start of when the competitive season resets, to avoid people running away with really high scores with the previous season's broken deck. So that's a massive thumbs up, and I'm really excited about that change in direction, and long may it continue. Alright, let's jump into the fix. So basically what they're saying is that the Astra Militarum reinforcement is just a bit too powerful. They can see it in the stats, and they don't want everyone to get frustrated with just running into countless Gryfs. So let's have a look. This is a hotfix, guys. They've said it's something that's in addition or separate to their usual schedule, which makes me think they will be a balance patch as well, but I don't know. But either way, the hotfix is focused on Astra Militarum. Number one, Vitus Gryf you've now lowered his melee from 6 to 4, and his range from 5 to 3, and health from 6 to 4. So all three stats have taken a hit. In addition to that, her strike ability is now a slay ability. So I mean, this is quite a big difference, right? If we take a look at Gryf, for example, we've lost 2 melee, we've lost range, and we've lost health. Personally, I think this is well, first of all, good that they've nerfed Gryf. Personally, I think they've gone a little bit too far, and the thing that makes this difficult for me is the interaction between slay and only 4 health, right? Because you have to slay something, you have to survive, and with 4 health that's really difficult to do. So I would prefer this to be a strike ability still, as opposed to slay, meaning, and then I'd be completely happy with the stats, or left the health as it was and made it a slay ability, but that means that Gryf's got at least some chance. I think there's quite a lot of situations where Gryf would not trigger the Tempest Aquilian, and that would make Gryf just a really bad flanking option for 5 energy. So I think that Gryf is kind of in this place now where you can still run it and it will still be effective in situations, but other situations it will be sitting there like not very useful at all. So yeah, it becomes quite a mediocre legendary, and definitely, you know, you definitely don't need to worry about including it. I think it, like I say, in some situations it will still be quite good, but I mean, this is this is not like a touch, you know, like a point off here, a point there. This is a really big reworking, I think, of the card, and the power level goes from being the best card in the game to a pretty average to even potentially subpar. I suppose if you get both off, it's still good. So I'll say it's like average, but the condition to get the second Tempestus Aquilian, you know, the second flanker, is much more difficult now, much more difficult indeed. All right, next up, what have we got? Armored Lightning has also been touched. This is the new stratagem. It's increased its cost from 5 to 6, and it now grants health instead of armor. Now, obviously, funnily enough, it's called Armored Lightning, and it's lost its armor. Just tickles me a little bit. I think that going up to 6 is probably a good thing. This card was very powerful. I personally would. It makes the 6 spot very competitive now. There's quite a lot of things in the 6 drop, particularly like the Chimeras and the Prime and quite a few tanks, but I do think this makes sense, like if each one of them's worth 2, and it does say if you control a vehicle gain health instead of armor. Not sure how I feel about that. I think that obviously when you get more more. When you get armor, you do better against higher powered stuff, but the health is better against like pings, if that makes sense. So it depends on what you're kind of facing overall in the meta. But I do think that it does just slow down the tempo of the deck a little bit, which, to be honest, was probably needed. So this is one that I'm really not sure how I feel about. I think that 6 probably does make sense, but again, I'm not gonna lie, it is a big shift in power from where it previously was. Okay, and then we have one final change, which is the Valkyrie Drop, which says it no longer grants flank. So the description is now deal 3 to an enemy, and if the target dies, deploy a Tempestus Scion. Okay, so I actually think this is the one that I'm not sure was necessary, if I'm honest. I personally think that this is not that good now, especially for an epic card. So I actually think this was fairly reasonable, to be honest, but now basically you won't be able to do the thing anymore where you would remove one unit and then stun a big unit. What this does mean is that mid-range beefy units can come back into the meta. I think things like Neurothrop, and even things some of my mech decks that I've released guides on this season, go check them out. I think actually will benefit massively from this type of change, and I don't know that this card will get played anymore, to be honest. So overall, that was the so they were the changes. What do I think? I think that honestly, before we had the expansion that came out with these cards, the Astra Militarum was by far the weakest faction. It was really struggling, and I think we obviously saw it shoot up to S tier with the new cards, and I do think these are significant enough changes to bring the power level down. Now, I don't think they go down to being the worst faction again, not by a long shot. I still think there's some pretty good stuff we can do, and there's some other good cards that got released, but I do feel it's probably going to be a lot more like mid-tier now. For those of us who are in the Warpforge Open, it's kind of weird because it does affect the tournament, and you can't change the faction that you picked. So just on the tournament scene, it kind of is going to definitely have a bit of an impact on that, and those who did pick Astra Militarum may be wishing that they hadn't for these later rounds. But then again, pretty much everyone did pick them, so kind of everyone will be in the same boat. In terms of the overall thing, I think it's a great direction that we got a hotfix. I think it's a great direction that they want to try and aspire to have all the balances done ready for the start of the season. I think that is absolutely fantastic. In terms of the changes themselves, I think this is sort of middle of the road for me, in terms of how good do I think the changes are. I think they might have gone just a little bit too far on Gryf and the Valkyrie Drop, to be honest. So I do feel a little bit for people who Astra Militarum hardcores, or who threw a lot of money into it, and we've got to be. I do think that it's hopefully there's a bit of a lesson here for EG in terms of it's not good for the long term. It's not a good feel-good feeling. I've already seen loads of comments. Everybody seems to think that the plan is to just make broken cards, sell you, steal all your money, and then basically change the cards 3 to 4 weeks later. Now, I don't necessarily subscribe to that, and I understand it's very, very difficult. I want new and impactful cards. I don't want new cards that are rubbish and underpowered and not usable, because that's not going to be fun. So I do understand it's a very difficult thing, but I do think that we have to be mindful of that perception creeping in too. So it does probably just basically raises a need for a little bit more diligence in the card design, and in Gryf in particular was an egregious. In fact, if we didn't have Gryf, I actually don't think it would have been a bad release. I think it was quite a decent release. But the Gryf card in particular was just it just looked like, I don't know, it just looked like someone got excited and didn't really think about how it would impact the game. So yeah, overall, not the best changes, but a really nice direction. Now, it's going to mean that the meta is going to be interesting in terms. I do think that the GSC and the Dark Angels will be very good. I think Sylar will get a bit better again. I think Neurothrop will get better again. Some cards that I feel could do with nerfing. I want to start with the Dark Angels.
Just a couple of tweaks that I would make to the Dark Angels. I think the first tweak I would make would be to the Deadly Hunters. I wonder whether we can kind of... It says for each enemy unit. I think that should say for each enemy troop. I don't think the Warlords should count for it, and that would just bring Deadly Hunters down a peg. It's either that or you've got to put this up to 8 energy. I do think Deadly Hunters is so good. It is a crucial card because they don't have any really go wide AoE, so it is a very important card, but it's a very powerful card, and I do think that it's just a little bit over the top at the minute, but I wouldn't want to see like a massive nerf, just a little sort of tweak to that potentially. And another one that I think could do with a touch is the Deathwing Knight Master. Again, I don't want to see this. I really love that we've got a 9-drop that is kind of where the power is. I think that's very rare in this game, and we should have more of that, to be honest. I quite like the AoE because, as we just said, that this is like one of 2 other real like decent AoEs. I think the +3 to all units, to be honest, could be toned down. I actually think that could be reduced to as much as +1 to all units. The other thing that's a consideration is actually getting rid of the shield. Like, I don't know that it needs the shield when it's got the armor 2 as well, unless you went like shield and armor 1, but just maybe something there in terms of that combination. So more like tampering with this unit, but don't just destroy its effect. And I think the AoE is actually pretty critical as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so the next thing as well I just wanted to touch on is the Chaos unit. How this card has survived. Like, I really do think the Warp Talon needs to reduce from 6 to 5 melee. If you look at the 4 energy stealth units that the Tyranids have, they got touched and they got really brought down in power level, and they don't even have fly. So how this guy survives, and especially because this guy's got access to things like you know, the Demonic Frenzy and all the things that can buff it, Murderous Desires, for example. It just gives Chaos some ridiculous reach. I'd just like to see it come down, perhaps down to 5 or even 4-1, but it doesn't have any guns on, does it? So it probably can't have any range attack. But maybe just making it a 5 would bring it down a peg or 2. Yeah, and I think that's in a bit. Now the last thing is obviously something like the vehicles. I'm really not sure what to touch in this. I think one of the things that people have talked about is potentially the roaming outriders actually going down, actually not dealing damage, like this ability just doing stun, or maybe even just doing 1 damage to the target and then only repeating the stun effect for each additional vehicle. I'm not sure about that, but I can see the argument. Like, it is particularly stifling right now. It is 4 energy and you're not developing your board, and if you have to spend 2 energy to draw it as well, that's 6 energy, so you are paying quite a bit for it. But you know, it is particularly egregious in the early game. You can sort of get away with just skipping 2 turns and then playing this and not being too far behind on the board, so that potentially needs a look at. But other than that, I've heard some people talking about Sappher being nerfed. I don't agree. I think Sappher pays a premium of 2 for basically card draw, and it opens up great windows for card design, so I definitely don't want to see that get changed. But yeah, overall I think those couple of tweaks will make a significant difference. So yeah, overall that's it from me, guys. Let me know in the comments what you think to the patch, if there's any thoughts you have about the changes that were made, and where do you think the Imperial Guards sit now. Other than that, thanks for the support, guys. Hit that like and subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, maybe check out this one next. I'll see you in the next one.